medical wisdom to help us stay healthy as we age or deal with the problems that may arise. Aging Gracefully tonight on Call with the Prairie Doc. Good evening and welcome to On Call with the Prairie Doc. No matter what we do in life, we usually hope that we can do it gracefully. Giving your first public speech, attending your first dance, or asking that special someone if they might like to marry you. But maybe one of the most important times to be graceful is when we age. To grow older gracefully is a sublime wish. But first, let's take a look at this week's Prairie Doc quiz question. It's a yes or no question. When turning 65 years of age, if you have had a pneumonia vaccine or a Prevnar vaccine 5 years earlier, should they have any other pneumonia vaccinations? Yes or no? We'll give the answer at the end of the show. Now, joining us tonight is Dr. David Ziegler, Vice Chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at the USD Sanford School of Medicine. Tell us a little bit about this. You're Vice Chair of the Internal Medicine Department. That's a neat position and an honor.
It's a great position because I don't have to make all the decisions. We've got a chair that makes all the, he gets all the hard work. I just come
You're
in.
the one who does the work.
I'm the cleanup hitter.
Yeah, they say it's the vice chair that does all the work. The chair does
it's the other way around.
Other way around. And we have a new chair of internal medicine. How's that been?
He's great. He's has a lot of background in genetic medicine, and he came to us from North Dakota, and he's an excellent physician working in our clinic as well as running the Department of Internal Medicine, and he's writing papers, and he's an expert in genetics and medicine.
Wow. So you kind of came to medicine in a
roundabout way?
Roundabout way? Let's hear a little bit about that. Where'd you start?
Well, I first had a PhD in physiology, and I was looking for a job after I finished my postdoctoral fellowship, and I was looking for a place to, and lo and behold, a position available at the University of South Dakota School of Medicine, and so I took a job teaching medical students physiology and pharmacology, mostly cardiovascular and renal. And
explain physiology. Just what
physiology is looking at the homeostasis of the body and how different systems work. Like it actually looks at medicine and how, like, the heart works in a mechanical format and how it pumps, and the physics and chemistry behind it. And so it's actually a really more or less a mathematical and scientific approach to medicine. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. I taught that for about 8 years, and then my wife was finishing up medical school, and so I decided she was having so much fun, I'd try it myself, and so I went back to medical school and finished 4 years, and then my residency at South Dakota, and then I've stayed here ever since.
So, and now you're on the faculty.
Now I'm on the faculty.
Vice Chair of Internal Medicine. So you practice, though, still, outpatient medicine mostly?
Yes.
And you're in charge of the continuing education for physicians?
Yes.
And that involves not just the med students, but the practicing physicians in
Practicing physicians. Mostly it's actually designed, grand rounds and, trying to promote education for the faculty of the med school, and also practicing physicians around the state to keep them abreast of current topics and ideas that are to keep us all fresh, because we all need to be constantly learning, because it's important to, you know it is. Medicine's changing all the time, and what we thought we knew as we were finishing med school is not always the way it's supposed to be anymore. No. So it changes. Yeah. It changes fast. So they tell me by the time you're out in medical school, everything's, half of what you learned has changed. But on the other hand, what we really learned during medical school is how to learn and how to become good physicians and stay abreast of the information. So.
Right, and it's evolving, but I think there's certain things that don't change much. Anatomy,
yeah,
and certain physiology
Yeah, and I think and also though you learn that you have to constantly just keep reading. You read all the time, and I do too. Keep up on what's new and what's happening, and I think that makes you a better physician.
Yeah. So you do a lot of, as you take care of people, mostly they're older.
Well, as I've grown older, they've grown older too. You know how that is?
Yeah. So geriatrics, learning how to care for people who are older, if we were going to talk about growing old gracefully, I know in my mind what the most important thing we can do for them. I would wonder what you would think is the most important
I think,
principle.
actually several things. One is to stay active. I have a 98-year-old patient who still volunteers at the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, and she is, not too long ago, she gave up mowing her own lawn.
Yeah.
And I think that has kept her young, has kept her interested. She has outside interests and people to talk to. I think it's very important for people to have family or friends or people to interact with, because as your compatriots and the people you grow up with and family die, you get to be alone. And so it's important as you grow older to maintain friendships and people that you can interact with. So I think that's very important. Activity, eating right, and taking your medicines appropriately. And I think those are probably the most important things. But mentally, just being active. There was someone who talked about how do you stay young? It's have something to get up for every day.
Yeah. I was talking to a physiatrist, a German researcher on wellness and rehabilitation and health. And his philosophy is that, and in fact, he says there's solid scientific data that the more you sit, the closer you are to death. And the more you're up out of that chair, moving and shaking and doing and interacting and going and doing, just as you said. That's, I think, it. Frailty does come upon people. How do you suggest we help people who are frail?
Well, physical therapy. They do a great job to keep people active as much as possible. Try to avoid wheelchairs and scooters. I think they are ways, everybody I think I need a scooter. Well, I think that's the worst thing a lot of people can do. There are people who absolutely need them, but you can put that off as long as possible. That's the best thing. Also, I think staying interested and interacted in things. It is hard when you see people that are becoming more frail, and I think sometimes you need to move into a home where you have care that can help you with some of your daily activities.
But I'd say the best way to avoid that institutional help that some people need sometimes, but the best way to try to avoid that is that physical activity.
Right.
And walking probably is the most physiologic of
Right.
all. Let's talk about diet, though. You had made a comment about sugar, and a lot of people are talking about carbohydrates. What's your take on carbohydrate or a low carbohydrate diet or a higher? Because if you're going to go low on carbo, you're going to go up on lipid.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think that. I think lipids have been villainized overly. I think there's nothing wrong with butter or other fats.
Yes.
I think that it's they're natural, and I think large amounts of sugar is detrimental. I use the term that sugar is the common man's cocaine,
Yeah.
because it's so addicting. I mean, just think, you'd love to have a donut, or a candy bar or something, and it's just really not good for you. I mean, pies and cakes, I think in very small amounts are fine, especially as you get older. I mean, when you're 20, you can tolerate that. When you're 30 or 40, less so. But when you get over 65, you really need to be much more aware of not eating that sugar.
And I think if the big studies say that the highest risk for a higher calorie is the sugar, the sweets, the carbohydrates.
I tell people, particularly for people like diabetic, it's like looking at if you're going to build a fire. You know, like if you eat fats, it's like a big log. If you eat protein, it's more like a smaller log. Carbohydrates is more like, you know, kindling, and sugar is gasoline.
And you think that that's particularly bad for the elderly?
I do.
And because it's just that same thing about calorie excess?
Calorie excess, it tends to be hard on your pancreas for your diabetes. It puts on weight, and it makes you, you know, the problem is your blood sugars go up and they go down, and they go up and they go down. And that rapid change in blood sugars is not good for you.
It's not good. How about herbal supplements? Are you a person that promotes things? I will give you my bottom line.
Go ahead. You do it first.
I believe vitamin D is something that's appropriate, but you need to have your calcium monitored because sometimes there's more.
Affect growth time.
Yeah, and calcium can, you know, people who have hyperparathyroidism, which is different than thyroid, but parathyroidism, they're people who have low-grade tendencies. So you've got to monitor calcium when you're taking vitamin D periodically, you know, once a year, once every 6 months. But I think for the most part, we just don't get enough sun to get enough vitamin D when we're north of Omaha, is what they say.
Well, I think I think the northern climes here, we are chronically low on vitamin D. And I think even people who get out and get a fair amount of sun still can be low in vitamin D.
And it runs particularly heavy people.
I think it also has to do with our Nordic heritage. I think people from those
climes
genetically have less of vitamin D absorption.
And why in the heck is it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe
either.
it's their fair skin.
I don't know. Maybe because they can drink milk, they need to with the vitamin D that's supplemented in milk. Who knows? That's a good question. Once you've lost the ability to do a routine task, it may still be possible to regain that skill or slow the additional loss of movement.
As an occupational therapist, I work not only in the hospital setting, in the clinic setting. I also work with people in their homes to make sure that homes are safe for people to live in, so that they have enough strength and stamina and endurance to be able to live there safely and appropriately. I also prescribe them adaptive equipment in case they need help with bathing, dressing, those sorts of things, to make it just a little bit easier for them to be able to do what they need to be able to do every day. Adaptive equipment are pieces of equipment that I help people obtain that makes it easier for them to maneuver in their environment. So say a person has a walker that they're using, they might need a walker tray over the top of that to make it a little bit easier to get things from one place to another in their house or in their kitchen. They might need what's called a sock aid or a reacher to help them get dressed in the morning, to pull pants up and get socks on. They might need a handheld shower head in the shower to make it easier for them to be able to reach and wash all their body parts. They might need what's called a tub transfer bench, so that you don't have to be able to step over into the tub, which could cause a fall. Basically what they would do is sit down on the bench and then swing their legs in. Makes it a little bit easier for them to be able to shower on their own safely. So when I go into the home, some of the typical hazards I see are cords laying in and around the home, whether that be from lamps, other electrical devices in the home. Sometimes there's not enough lighting for the patient at home, so really educating them about the different types of lighting and task lighting that will really make it easier for them to be able to do, say, things in the kitchen, or be able to see well enough to brush your teeth or comb your hair in the bathroom. Another big fall hazard is throw rugs. You see those a lot. I see them often when I go to people's homes for home safety assessments, and that's one of the first things I tell my patients is to get rid of them. One of the things that I recommend for older adults to do, this is good for anyone to do, is to stay active, and whether that be through walking programs or exercise or any type of physical activity that you can do throughout the day. Integrating that into your daily routine is one of the biggest things to help older adults be able to have enough strength and endurance and be able to do what they need and want to be able to do every day. Even functional tasks like raking the leaves or playing with your grandkids, or even doing simple stretching or exercise or aerobic activity is very important in keeping healthy and keeping well and strong, so you're able to stay in your home for as long as you're able to.
So she brought up a number of things that we had said. It was nice to have that reassurance that we were on the right track there. I love the idea of staying active to stay well.
Yes.
She's an OT person. What's the difference between OT and PT, Dave?
Well, occupational therapy tend to work with patients with upper extremities, also for daily living, managing, like she said, how to bathe, how to, sometimes helping them eat, helping them do what we call the activities of daily living. Physical therapy is more the exercise. I think of it as more with muscle strength and tone. Both work exceptionally well, and you and I know that we depend on the OTs and PTs a lot, and speech therapists a lot, to help our patients recover from when they've had an illness or when they've fallen and gotten hurt, to kind of work through that to get themselves back in their normal condition.
Right. So, and I see this home safety eval thing happen with occupational therapy a lot, and I think it's wonderful. They'll go out to the home, they'll look at the bathtub, they'll see the things.
They actually tell people what they need to help.
And actually find a way for them to get it.
And be able to stay at home. Because, it's really, every old person, as I want to do too, is stay at home. As long as we can do it safely and as long as you're possible, I think that's great.
I think it's important.
My mother's 93 and
Is that
still living
right?
at home, and I think it's by herself and is doing very well. But we've had to make adjustments to make it healthy.
Work. I like the idea of, if you're going to make your retirement home, or if you're going to find a new place to live as you're getting into that older stage of your
No
life.
steps.
No steps. What do you think?
Absolutely. The steps are if you can have a normal ranch home with no steps, that really, you can live in your house longer time.
I do say, though, that as I've been working with a program of trying to get elderly people to exercise, that one of the exercises is to have them go up steps and down steps, or do one step up and one step down, and you can put into your exercise space where you have your treadmill or your bicycle or the weights that you usually do, or you can also have a set of steps to work up and down and up and down.
As long as they have a handrail with it.
Got to have a handrail with it. One of my favorite people in the world was Dr. Satish Saxena, who was a physician and internist from our community for many years, and I took care of him after he retired. And I said, you've got to get exercising. Okay, well, I'll find a way. And he came back and he said, I've decided this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm not going to tell him what to do. He was going to tell himself. So we'd take 30 minutes every day just walking up and down his steps. Just 30 minutes, up and down, up and down, up and down. He did it every day. I'd said, well, you could break that up and go outside and go for walking and do it. No, steps. And it's probably a good thing.
I just be careful. I think it has to depend on each individual and what their ability to function at home and be on their own.
I like the idea of walking a mile a day, minimally every day, every person outside if you can. The problem is in South Dakota, it's not always safe. And so one of the things we've talked about in my group is walking stick.
Yeah.
And you can get cross-country ski poles, or you can make a walking stick, and also when the dogs attack, you can
beat them off.
Hit that dog. Well, let's talk about falling. I mean, this is probably the biggest culprit of broken hips and disability. Cause of people have to go to nursing home.
Yep.
What would you think are the big causes for falling?
Besides rugs?
Yeah, besides the rug.
I think not recognizing your own limitations. And I think a lot of people hurry when they're elderly. They feel like they're holding something up or they need to hurry to get something, and they don't take time to stop and, just wait for someone to help them, or, be careful. We get impatient.
What about medicines? What do you think? What percentage of the people who do fall do you think might be on medicines that help them fall or encourage their fall or was part of the problem?
It's probably not as many as you'd think. I think the worst culprits are the narcotics. And I think those are, most of the blood pressure medicines are pretty well managed. But I do think narcotics really do put people at a lot of risk. And so it's really good to try to limit that as much as possible. And obviously there's a big push to try to limit narcotic use in this state and around the country.
I think also my bias is that prostate drugs can sometimes do that. And even the bladder relaxer drugs can do that.
I think there are newer prostate drugs though that really cause less than that than they used to. When we started, some of the medicines we had to use had a lot of problems with orthostatic hypotension. People would take it at night and then they'd get up in the middle of the night and they were dizzy and then they'd fall. But a lot of the newer ones are not like that anymore.
Right. But if it's happening, and that'd be my comment to the audience, if you're finding that you're getting lightheaded in the night, let your doctor know.
Yes.
And look at the medicines that you're on.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to talk about boomers. I mean, one of the things that they say is that the people that are getting older,
Like us?
like you and me, are you a boomer?
Absolutely.
I am a boomer too. They're going to be a kind of a demanding group. You
mean blow up the system?
Yeah. Yeah. So they may expect this or that. And my thinking is the boomers will have more hips and more artificial knees and so on.
Yeah.
The worry I have is that they'll come to the end of their life and they're going to want everything, and they will not have prepared for the potential of being dragged through too much medicine at the end of their life. What's your take on that, this boomer group?
I think they all, we've had a very wonderful medical system in this country. And I think we have been accustomed to having just about anything we want. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be limited in the future. I think our ability to just say, well, but I want a hip, is not going to be forever. I think there are limitations on, maybe age or, medical problems that may be limited, and so I think we have to choose wisely in medicines and what's going to be good for patients.
And then there are people who, what about the feeding tubes? Do you think that we overdo feeding tubes in people who are certainly dying? I know that that's been, the support study in the late 90s suggested that we did. I mean, that we didn't let go of people in the end.
I think people have to be aware that what they want as they get older, and be really cognizant of, okay, what do I really expect out of my older life? And I think aging gracefully, we want to have some dignity in our later years. Being on tube feedings, I think, for a short time is reasonable. For an extended period of time, I'm not sure I would want to be on a feeding tube, but unfortunately a lot of people get started not knowing how long they're going to be on those tubes, and it kind of goes on and on. I'm not sure how you stop those situations. It is a difficult, to say, well, they've been doing well for now as long as we feed them, and when do we stop? It becomes a real question of what a person wants to live with, in my opinion.
Well, and I guess what I think I'm thinking the best answer to help solve that problem is an advance directive.
Absolutely.
What do you do to bring that topic up to your patients?
I try to, talk to them about what their expectations are and say, you're not going to live forever, and that it's important for people to understand that we can't make that decision for you, that the patient needs to make those decisions, or their family, and if they are incapacitated, then we're having a real difficult time making that decision. So I think if they can make it ahead of time, I think that's very important.
It'll save them
a lot of trouble and a lot of money and
suffering.
And I think that's part of it too. Is we have patients who, they say, well, I didn't want to spend, have a family farm, and now it's gone.
Yeah, because we were able to keep him
alive for another 6 months.
Right. What about, and let's move in the direction of patients that are cared for by their spouse or by their kids, and the caregiver. I know of many caregivers that are out there. I can't imagine how they don't burn out, and it is a burden on many caregivers.
And I see it with a lot of spouses where their husband or wife now has Alzheimer's, and taking care of them is all they can do in their life. They become isolated a lot of times from their friends because they can't leave their husband or wife because they're taking care of it can be very demanding. And I think the only people that can give them some relief is their children when they come in and help them, to give them some, free time. A lot of times like in Sioux Falls, they have the daycare for adults that they can take them and just be able to go out and do the shopping that they need to do. And so little things like that make a huge difference for those.
I've seen those daycare things really help, because what happens is they realize the caring person, the one that's providing the support of the demented person, for example, they realize it works out. The
Right.
demented person gets along, does fine, and then there's a time when you stay there.
And there are times when they cannot care for them anymore, and either because the person's a danger to themselves, or they wander, and they try to lock the house, but they wander outside, and you're sleeping, and suddenly you wake up and your spouse is not there, and you're wondering where the heck they are, and they're either wandering around the house or outside, and I really feel for the individuals who are caring for them.
This leads to another topic of the spouse of a person who has cancer, and they see it's going to be a loss, and it's that person who with cancer is going to go away, and the person that's left has got to be the support person. And do we give them enough love and care and support?
I do think there are support groups for those people, which I think are very important. They help, cancer support or Alzheimer's supports or Parkinson's support groups or whatever. And they're very, very helpful just for someone to talk to that understands what you're going through. But yeah, it becomes very difficult for those people to kind of be there, and it's hard on the person who's dying and has the cancer or has dementia, and it's also hard on the spouse. Either way, it's and
tough.
As the person who's having a cancer, you feel like I'm a burden on my spouse, but most good relationships, they wouldn't have it any other way anyway.
Yeah, it's true. Exercise is simply moving in ways that improve your ability to move. You don't have to train for a marathon or bench press 300 pounds to make yourself more fit.
This is what we call a healthy movement class. The goal of the program is to hopefully strengthen hips, legs, and core of elderly citizens of Brookings to try to prevent any sort of falls. We do a lot of standing leg exercises, squats, and just general core side-to-side movements. We're not doing any sort of heavy weights of any kind. They're body weight, and we don't do a whole lot of reps. So I'd say there'd be a lot more strength training and just endurance to prevent falls by strengthening hips, core, and legs. But the latent function that a lot of people might not think about is we're just generally improving lifestyle. This is another chance for the elderly community to get out, socialize, to exercise, and just live a happier lifestyle. It includes core strengthening, leg strengthening, and also some bouncing and hopping to strengthen bones and prevent any fractures, hip breaks, things along those lines. Along with just general balance techniques, eyes closed, how can you hold your balance up? And we would sometimes walk a line to see foot to foot, front to front, and that's a good way to see the improvement. That's our best way of measuring balance improvement. We have all sorts of people join this class. I know a few of them have had past injuries, but we have young, healthy people who want to get out, in a social atmosphere, and have an exercise program that's going to hopefully prevent falls in the future before they've even had an injury. Almost a form of preventative exercise. Every 4 to 5 months, we'll do a checkup, basically. We'll have everyone fill out a survey saying, what do you find difficult? What's the difficulty for you to walk a mile? What's the difficulty for you to stand up out of a chair? And we hope to see a positive trend, and we have since our first one we did was in March, and then just last month in October, we did another check, and it seemed everybody had a positive trend. If you're trying to improve your health, the best thing you can do is just try to improve your lifestyle, improve your happiness. I think one of the best ways to improve happiness and lifestyle is to get out and be active, get out and socialize. When you get out and socialize, you're likely going to have to be active doing it, and this is just a great opportunity to mix both those things. Up, 3, if you can hold it there for a moment, even better.
So that was interesting, an exercise group in the elderly in the community. I think it's a free class.
Really great. And you know, they were doing chair exercises, and the chair provides the support so that they are less likely to fall, but they get the exercise, which I think is great.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard over this period of time, because our study is evaluating certain exercises versus walking, the exercise group has hopping, as he mentioned, for that quick catch yourself if you're falling, and to strengthen your bones. It has a balance thing to practice, and they keep telling me I can feel my balance is better because it's practice. And then there's a stretching thing that makes your muscles able to stretch so that when you contract, you have a distance, you can move better. And then there's strengthening.
You know, there's a great book about Strong Women Stay Young. It's about exercises for women, particularly as you get older, to promote bone health and prevent bone fractures. And I think it's exercise keeps yourself from having a breaking, having spinal fractures or bone fractures or hip falls and breaking your hip.
I think that kind of walking and strengthening and hopping and moving is heads and shoulders above any pill like Fosamax or any of the bone density pills. I think the exercise is the key. We're going to talk about having a primary care doctor. How important do you think a medical home? Everybody hears about this medical home thing. There's some data about people who don't have medical homes and illnesses. What do you know about all that?
Well, obviously, I personally, because I think it's good to have a physician that you can develop a relationship with and that is there and can understand who you are as you grow older. Like my patients who've grown older with me. I mean, it really does make you understand them. And when they call in with a problem, you understand where they're coming from, and you can treat it appropriately. I think that you can limit the amount of tests you do. You can choose the right number of medicines so that you don't overtreat them. But I think specifically to not overtest. I mean, I have a patient who said, do I need to have a test for, do I have an aortic aneurysm? I said, let's just look at your past record to see what you've had in the past. And no, you don't need to. And so I think that's the real benefit of having a physician that
knows you.
Knows you, and you've been with for a long time. And it's also very reassuring as a patient to develop a close relationship. I mean, I'm very close to my patients. Over the years, you develop real friendships. And I think that's one of the best part of medicine.
I think it's the best health care you can get when you
Right.
have a primary care doc that you trust. People who are wandering out there, they don't know who they can call on. They don't have a primary care guy or gal, and so they end up going to the emergency room. Well, they get...
I have a question. When should a person develop a primary physician? What age?
Good question. I think for sure 50, certainly 40,
Yeah.
it would be better. If you're a woman, most women, you know...
Yeah, most women see an OB up until they're age 40 or then.
Yeah.
But I still think
what's your answer?
I think they should definitely start to establish someone by age 40. If you have medical history of problems in your family, then earlier.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of my 18-year-olds, I say, fine, you came in, or, early 20s, seen you, come back when you need me, or if you have problems.
And I'm your guy.
Yeah.
And when you got a problem, call me.
in, yeah.
So you've got to establish
Yeah,
person.
and I don't think they necessarily need to come in every year. I think that's way too much.
Yeah.
Most 18, 20, or 30-year-olds are on autopilot.
Yeah.
Unless they have medications and they need to renew those.
Right.
But otherwise, I think age 40 is a good time to really establish with
That's a really good
internal
question.
medicine
Kind
or
of a
family
guy.
medicine, whatever.
Yes. And I think that it would be a huge savings for our country and for insurance industry and for the patient. So I think that would be another point. Well, we talked about medical home and care providers, and we did say some words about the value of a living will. And so let's go into dementia a little bit, because that's the concern that
Well, in dementia, I almost see that there's almost a blossoming of the amount of dementia that we see anymore. I don't know whether there's a relationship of why that we see so much more.
is it because they're getting older? I mean, that
It's
there
partly
are more
because
older people?
there are more older people, and also it's partly, I think, we're diagnosing it more correctly earlier, or at least paying attention to it. And there are some medications that can help, but they don't treat it, they don't make it better. They say that it actually delays it, but I think one of the most important things for prevention, there's some you can't do anything about, but to try and stay active mentally and physically, involved with your church and your family, being active in your mentally and doing things to keep your mind. It won't stop it completely, but I think it can help protect, And I think also, as you get older, being in a position, that where if you have some dementia, being in a safe environment, whether that's at home or where you feel comfortable. And I have a lot of people that if they get outside their home, they feel lost. But as long as they're in their own home, it's familiar
okay.
and they're okay.
And the stresses don't occur.
Yeah.
I know that to address that very point, it was in a Time magazine that I read this. So I mean, it wasn't the New England Journal of Medicine, but they talked about research that was being done on rats that had been bred to be to rapidly age. Mm-hmm. So all this particular breed of rat, they all died half the age or a third of the age of the normal rat. So they have this progeria kind of an illness. Mm-hmm. And so they took half of them and they let them sit in the couches and do whatever they wanted, whatever. And the other half, they ran them.
The rat couches?
The rat couches,
Yeah.
little rat couches.
Yeah.
So, and the others, they ran them. They ran them twice a day on the treadmills. And it was a tremendous difference between the two groups. And that the exercisers did not get so sick. And his description of the aging process was really quite severe in the couch potato rats, and markedly better in the exercisers. And that same study was done in monkeys when they injected a poison that causes Parkinson's disease. They gave the monkeys or the chimpanzees, the couch potato monkeys, that Parkinson's disease came on gangbusters. The exercising chimpanzees didn't get it. And so there's solid scientific data to say the best thing you can do to prevent dementia is what you said, in an exercise activity program. And I think also connection, keeping the brain working.
Coffee?
I think coffee helps too. Here's to you, Dave.
Yeah.
So, but there are different kinds of dementia. Now,
Right.
so what's the most common?
I think just senile, what we call senile dementia, or just dementia of older as you get older. And it's not truly a dementia. I think it's just our memory circuits don't work as fast, and you have trouble remembering things, but it's not debilitating. I think the next probably most common is Alzheimer's dementia, which is an entirely different form. It's a type of dementia that with changes within the brain and its ability to function deteriorates to the point where they can no longer care for themselves, and eventually they can't feed themselves, and forget how to swallow even. Right. But it's a slow progression as slowly the brain eventually dies.
Sometimes it's this slope, sometimes it's a rapid slope. I've seen it both ways.
I've seen it both ways too.
I have, it's an interesting thing, and we really don't understand it. No. And they're trying to find an answer. If pharma comes up with a very, 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 very expensive answer, it's going to be very hard on the healthcare.
I hope that they come up with something, but it'll be hard to see what happens in the future.
Right. I think the salient issue on Alzheimer's is they retain the ability to have a normal gait, but they can't remember a new thing. That's the big...
And it's interesting, many of those patients with Alzheimer's dementia are perfectly healthy.
In every other way.
Every other way except their brain is failing.
Yeah. So get them exercising. That'd be my most important thing. Well, there's also the multi-infarct dementia. They lose their gait. Yeah. Little strokes, emotional changes. Any other comments? That's a quarter of the dementia, something like that.
Yeah, it is obviously stroke based, and if you have I think it's important to make sure their heart rate's stable, that they don't have atrial fibrillation or other causes that could initiate
little strokes.
Strokes, yeah.
Aspirin a day?
In certain patients, I think that's appropriate. Not everybody.
Okay. All right. There's also, fighter dementia. The dementia pugilistica.
Yeah.
And there's alcohol dementia and Parkinson's, Lewy body.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different.
And I think that's the hardest thing is when you see a patient who, and when I see someone that says, well, I'm just not, or actually it's usually the caregiver that says they aren't remembering what they used to say, or they forget where the keys are, or they forget that they even put the keys somewhere. And
it's the care provider.
That's the care provider is the one that usually picks up on it. And there are tests you can do to kind of test that out. I have a test that I go through to test what their short-term and long-term memory, how that works. And I think that's kind of how I start. And then after that, you can do neuropsych testing, or you can also do, sometimes at the very extent, sometimes we have to do a PET CT, but mostly I think you start off with just neuropsych testing.
Yeah. I commonly will look at B12 and thyroid.
Yeah, you do.
Sometimes a heavy metal if you think that there might be something else.
Yeah, lead or
whatever.
Chromium or some of the others.
And let's talk a little bit about hospice, end-of-life care. I mean, we're kind of moving in that direction. Palliative care is a new thing. and end-of-life care is a new thing. And we're going to be doing a show that will probably, before this is aired, will have been on the air. But what's your sense of the value? Is this is a new thing, this palliative care in
I
hospitals?
don't know if it's been, seems like it's been around for quite a while now for me, but
Well,
it's
you're ahead of yourself. You've
you know,
been ahead on the cutting
because
edge.
hospice is just one of the, I think it's the best thing that's ever come by, and for people who are in that state where they can't care for themselves and need help at home, you have and are in a terminal illness that they're unlikely to live more than 6 months. They can have medical care that is more promoted and covered partly by the government, so that they can have a nurse come and visit them at home so they can stay in their own home, or if they need to go to a hospice cottage, that's another. But I think that there's acute hospice or chronic hospice, which is entirely, two different things, depending on how acute the illness is. But I think that it really does, those hospice nurses are the most caring individuals I've ever met.
Yeah. Well, I meet once a week with hospice nurses, and it's the most sustaining.
Aren't they most beautiful people?
They are golden heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really does tell you. I do like, I would make sure that we do say again that all of us should have an advance directive, and
Right.
and the major questions that I think should be asked would be, if I had a heart attack right now, would you want me to
Do CPR, be intubated,
put a respirator
down, and then also in the long term, if I'm not right, do I want to be put on
Feeding.
tube feedings? Those are the main questions. And I think that you should be the one answering it. It shouldn't be left up for your kids to make that decision, because it's not fair to your kids.
No, but the kids should know.
No, they should know what you want.
Yeah, and I know my lawyer friend LaWayne Erickson was involved in helping develop that with early on, and he has a strong belief of how we should do it. But my point is that it really should be just mostly a communication tool,
Right,
by which you tell your children what you want or
Right.
don't want.
right, and your spouse, just
Yeah.
so that you say, okay, this is fine. And you are allowed to die with dignity.
Yeah.
And that's the real bottom line, is that you should not lose your dignity when you're dying.
And now for tonight's quiz question, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a yes or no question. When turning 65 years of age, if you have had a pneumonia vaccine 5 years earlier, should they have any other pneumonia vaccines, yes or no? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So tell us about it. I mean, now, of course, there's the Prevnar, and then there's the Pneumovax. Explain those a bit, Dave.
Well, there are two different types of pneumonia vaccines. There's a new one out now that's called Prevnar 13, and if you have not had that, particularly, they will not cover it before age 65. So if you're 64 and a half, don't get it, because it will be expensive.
20 seconds.
And so I think go ahead and get the Prevnar 13, and then a year later you can get the Pneumovax.
And if you've had the Pneumovax already, wait a year.
Wait a year and go ahead and get the Prevnar 13.
All right. I think you took the confusion out of that very challenging question. We'll be right back after this.
All around town, from stores to playgrounds, babies are on the move. And there are diseases that are on the move too. And some of these spread easily. To best protect him from 14 serious diseases by the time he turns 2 years old, vaccinate him according to the recommended schedule, so he can go on about his business and you can have peace of mind. For more reasons to vaccinate, talk to your child's doctor or go to cdc.gov/vaccines.
In early October, my belly started aching, and over a week, with good local care and after extensive testing, the diagnosis of cancer of the bile duct and pancreas came down upon me. A large team of multi-specialists met and discussed my options, and they think I might have a chance at a surgical cure, but have recommended pre-surgical chemotherapy, which has been started. When they go in surgically to remove the tumor, we'll learn if it's spread or not. So I am facing a formidable challenge. And as an experienced internist, I probably understand this process more than almost anyone. I should add here that I have explored every option, including the Mayo and elsewhere, nutritional alternatives, everything. I'm very comfortable with my recognized and experienced surgeon in Sioux Falls and his partner, the oncologist. I also realize there is a significant chance that the tumor has spread and long-term chemo may be my option. A dear psychologist minister friend from afar wrote and asked how my soul is with all this and how should he pray for us. My answer was as follows. Dear Steve, I was 16 when I faced the sudden accidental death of my older sister. Add to that, I've been a geriatrician for 38 years and hospice director for more than 20. So you know I've been living with the reality of my own death for a long time. My faith surrounds and envelops me. I'm okay with dying. I'm trying to put it off as long as I can, but I'm okay if it happens sooner. I've had an absolutely great life, loved and played with gusto, gathered all the fun I could have at every juncture. I have done my level best to help people with the tools of my profession, and I even know that some days I made a difference. I've tried to be 100% honest at every turn. I'm surrounded by a wonderful spouse and honest, creative kids. I'm writing a book about healthcare at the end of life. Our multi-faith choir sings hymns weekly to people in need. All of that helps. Maybe I'm naive, but I sense my soul is content and even joyful. If I die from pancreatic cancer at 67 or 68, my family will suffer some, but I know that in the long run, they will celebrate my life, and I would encourage that. My tombstone will allude to my oft-repeated comment as we sail, even when there's no wind, we're not dead in the water. My tombstone shall read, finally dead in the water. I love it. Humor even unto death. So you asked how I want you to pray. I would ask you pray that all of us see and accept our own dying process. Pray that we learn to savor every moment, every friend, and every grandeur, smudge, scent, or splash of the world around us. And pray that we find a way to open our hearts to others, walk in another's moccasins, and find compassion even for our enemies. That is my prayer for all of you. Well, a big thank you to our guest, Dr. David Ziegler. Thank you so much, David, for joining us.
It was great to be here, Rick. Thank you for inviting me.
His experience brought great insight to our topic tonight. He's been a dear friend for many years. I would just like to remind you all that vaccine updates are not just for school kids. Check with your medical provider to see if you should get immunized or a booster today. Well, that does it for us tonight. From all of us here at On Call with the Prairie Doc, until next time, stay healthy out there, people.
Major funding for On Call with the Prairie Doc has been provided by
Avera is a proud sponsor of On Call on South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Larson Manufacturing is proud to support On Call Television as it continues to open doors for important medical information.
and by the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for South Dakota,
and with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions,
Brookings Health System, Ophthalmology Limited, South Dakota State Medical Association,
Avera Heart Hospital, Dakota Allergy and Asthma, Fishback Financial Corporation, Vance Thompson Vision,
Aberdeen Asthma and Allergy, Black Hills Medical Society, Dakota Bank, Orthopedic Institute, Physicians Care, Sanford Clinic Community Service Committee, Regional Health, and Swift Health Communications.